Merchants Corner. So thank you.
Hi, thanks. So what I'm going to talk about is actually leading up to the Merchants Corner, and we'll be showing a film about that, and then Jim will talk about it a little bit more. But I just want to give a little bit of background to the work that we're doing on Selkirk Avenue that the Merchants Corner is a part of. So on Selkirk Avenue, we've been developing over the past 15 years what is becoming really an intergenerational learning hub, and the Merchants Corner is sort of the next phase of that model that we've been slowly developing. Jim Silver and I both work at Urban and Inner City Studies, which is a University of Winnipeg program. But there are also several other initiatives on the street and nearby that are really part of that intergenerational learning model, and they'll be talked about in the film. So I'm just going to give you a little idea about what that's all about and why we think it's a really important place-based, neighborhood-based, experiential learning model that is really quite effective. So what we have on the street then, at one side of the street, we have the University of Manitoba Access Program, the Social Work Access Program. A few doors down, Urban Circle Training Center. Right next door to that is Mukudsang Childcare. We're underneath, currently in the basement below the childcare, providing our program from University of Winnipeg. Across the street, the Government of Manitoba's Aboriginal Education Directorate is situated, so they don't provide education the way that we do, but they're part of the model because they provide space, and it's sort of a community space for us to have meetings and do various programming with our students. Just a few blocks away is CETA Pathways to Education, which is an after-school program for inner city youth, primarily Aboriginal youth, and there are various other smaller initiatives. Songadinuan is a program, an alternative learning program for high school students as well on the street. Nadinaway does programming with youth on the street. And so what's unique about our programs is, first of all, that the community that we serve, a very large Aboriginal population, of course, in the north end of Winnipeg, and many of our students are Aboriginal, not all. All of the programs on the street operate really from a similar model where we're focused on looking at the impact of colonization, really integrating decolonizing pedagogy, trying to reverse some of that damage caused by colonization. It's really about empowering Indigenous students to first explore their cultural identities, empower them to be stronger, and eventually they move off of Selkirk Avenue and pursue education. So it's really about providing that safe, holistic learning space for Indigenous students. The other thing that's really important, I think, about our program, our program in particular at Urban Inner City Studies, that I've found actually most fascinating from my work, is that we also have several students that come from the main campus that are not North End, the inner city student that we are really focused on and most interested in providing a solid learning experience, a different learning experience for. But we have several of these mainstream, for lack of another term, students that come to the North End and are learning in the classroom with Indigenous students. And so we've got about a 50-50 split often in the classroom now. And certainly what I'm finding in the classroom is that there's this incredible learning experience happening, and a lot of it is the middle class non-Indigenous student who's really learning from the Indigenous students. And partly it works really well because we're teaching in the neighborhood where the Indigenous students are comfortable. There's enough of those students in the classroom where they feel able to speak. They don't feel marginalized in the classroom. So we have this really interesting learning experience happening. What also happens that's interesting about this particular model is that when the Indigenous students who are, inner city students who are uncomfortable going to the main campus to learn, they start to meet some other students that are on that main campus, and so when they go there, they're not as intimidated anymore. And so there's that really interesting sort of progression to sort of the traditional learning environment. It's a really powerful model, I think, really exciting that it's growing. It's providing opportunities for people at all different, different generations. So you have a case often where our students come to class, they first drop off their children at the daycare upstairs. Some of the students who are Urban Circle, once they get their high school, they come and they take classes at our program. Or they go to the social work program. Some of our students then apply to the inner city social work program, or they go to the main campus. We're now, as it'll be, Jim will talk a little bit more about this, but the CETA Pathways students who are getting their high school and are having extra supports through Pathways are starting to look at taking courses at our, so we're really creating this really safe environment for people to look at education as something now that is an opportunity for them rather than something that is for somebody else. So I think the film probably speaks to a lot of this, and so maybe we'll just sort of transition to that, and then Jim will sort of sum things up for you.
Selkirk Avenue and the north end of Winnipeg, places that over the years have become synonymous with images of neglect, poverty, gangs, and violence. The north end of Winnipeg, however, also has a long history of community building. It is a place that celebrates achievement, where people enjoy being together, and where young families are doing well. Until recently, though, efforts to build community were hampered by the Merchants Hotel, a proud local landmark that went from looking like this in the 1970s to becoming the Merch, a magnet for criminal activity and a source of fear for area residents as they went about their day-to-day lives.
I've worked here for 17 years and I've never walked on that side of the street because of the activities that happen there. I don't want to be in the way of something that happens.
That the Merchants Hotel had a negative impact on the lives of countless families is a well-known reality in Winnipeg. So is its contribution to how the North End is perceived as a place to avoid. Media images like this one reinforced this notion, further separating the mostly Indigenous people who live here from the rest of the city. Area residents dreamed of one day closing the Merch.
I was really starting to feel like that'll never change, and it's hard to change a community with that in the community, right in the middle of our community.
The dream did come true. After years of collaboration between community elders, North End community groups, local businesses, and government, the hotel closed on April 29, 2012.
I distinctly remember that day walking down to the Merchants Hotel and seeing the sign on the door saying that it was closed and that it was under new management. People stopping in front and taking pictures and just being very overwhelmed with joy to see that their neighborhood was being reclaimed.
Also being reclaimed that day was a new sense of safety and ease, as well as the chance to participate more fully in local efforts to build community and capacity. For these community groups, it was also a chance to build on the educational opportunities that were created in recent years, as post-secondary programs became available on Selkirk Avenue. Urban Circle Training Center was the first to commit to the area when it centralized its programs in this new building in 2004, a decision that caused some trepidation for longtime employees.
There was a point where we doubted that we should move here, but we didn't hesitate. We just pursued forward, and it seemed like everybody followed us down here.
The U of M Inner City Social Work program soon followed, and so did the U of W Department of Urban and Inner City Studies. The decision to offer these programs off campus and in the North End was based on a need for a curriculum that is culturally sensitive. It was also based on research showing that people feel safer and do better when they can study with others who have similar life experiences.
The needs of the people in this community are different than the needs of people in other communities. And recognizing that and providing those opportunities can only bring good results.
The education programs offered on Selkirk Avenue are also tailored to people's realities in the North End. And because the programs are practical, most graduates quickly find jobs as well.
I think the educational centers that are working in this part of Winnipeg and on Selkirk Avenue have seen the importance of education as a means to move into the economy for growing self-sufficiency of individuals and families. And I think that's a good balance.
Education is key to a balanced life because finding steady employment leads to transforming old cycles of dependency. Education also has its own rewards.
I found almost immediately in my own experience, I looked at myself differently. I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest change that anybody needs to experience, is just seeing themselves in another way.
Improvements in self-image also create a ripple effect, inspiring other family members to begin with their own educational journey. People benefit, and the community benefits.
We are definitely a community that is very different than most communities out there. We're a community that is not afraid to walk down the street and say hi and smile, and it's really friendly. You have to be down here to get that experience. It's a very different community.
These new positive stories, however, contrast with everyday life in the North End, a life that remains difficult for many.
I think people cannot imagine how vital the human capacity is to adapt to challenging situations. And this is a situation of survival in the midst of real challenges in the North End of Winnipeg. And Selkirk Avenue, I think, is becoming a place of renewal and opportunity. I think many people in the city would be surprised at that, but there are changes happening here that are very hopeful.
A sign there is hope in the North End is the fact that many students choose to settle here once they graduate and raise their families.
For a long time, we've been visitors in this part of the city, and people don't realize that we now make this home. We're becoming a people here. I think we recognize we can have our place in Winnipeg, and it's positive.
Closing the old Merchants Hotel was a crucial step in local efforts to create change. And now an opportunity also exists to literally transform the community. Area residents want to breathe new life into the building and redevelop it as a community and education center. The vision is to create a North End community campus to serve all age groups and educational needs. It will also integrate local resources like the Makonsuk Intergenerational Children's Center and the CETA Pathways to Education program. This new community hub will also include space for the community, as well as much-needed new housing units, becoming a magnet for new and positive community activities.
I see it as a meeting place and a learning place and a communicating place.
The redeveloped Merchants Corner should also become an important anchor on Selkirk Avenue, bringing new people and activities to the street and encouraging businesses to come back. This community elder's commitment to the Merchants Project is guided by a vision to create positive role models for children.
Well, I think people who have any sense of economy will know that programs in this part of the city are a good investment. But more than that, the quality of human shared existence in the land is a value to many of us. If we can improve opportunities for the young people and the children by supporting families for education and employment, we are doing something that is not only good for the heart, but good for the pocketbook. And I think that that can be easily recognized.
if kids are doing well and they're thriving, that's good for our economy, that's good for our communities, that's good for our world.
Community organizers also believe the project will help to counter a disturbing trend in the community: youth suicide.
Kids are taking their own lives because they feel like there's no hope, or that that opportunities aren't there for them. And I think that that's probably one of the saddest things, that we're failing them so profoundly that they feel like that's the only option that they have.
This reality is not lost on local business people, like this bakery owner who has volunteered countless hours to the Merchants Project, his way of giving back to a neighborhood that helped his family thrive for decades.
The payoff is that you're allowing someone the opportunity to become more than what their possibilities are now. And that's the important thing.
The north end of Winnipeg is changing. And with rising levels of education, people are becoming more confident in their own potential. To their credit, they've initiated many of these positive changes, but they also need the support of the greater community. An ongoing barrier to the community's vision for the Merchants Corner, however, is the reality that the north end remains divided from the rest of the city, in large part because old stereotypes persist.
You have to get beyond the reputation that you hear. It's not about the area, it's about the people who live within the areas. And there are a lot of people that care here.
People care because what they see in the Merchants Redevelopment Project is its potential to build a stronger and healthier community in the North End, and to break barriers and build new bridges across the city.
We're in a mood of celebration. It's almost hard to believe that we are at a place where we can say this is going to happen in community. There is a sense of finally getting to a place where the province realizes that this is a holistic process, it's a healthy process, and it's significant enough to be invested in. It's real.
And I just almost hit the roof. I was just so happy because the funding from the province was crucial. Like if we didn't get that support, we wouldn't have had the project.
I lived in the North End off and on for many years. And education, of course, has always been a key factor for me. And I think if I didn't have the opportunity to go to get my education, I wouldn't be here today standing in front of you people.
When the community comes together and they do their planning and they bring their leadership together and make it a priority, it makes it easier for us to identify it as something we want to do. So the community leadership allowed us to partner with them because we knew it was going to be a success.
Well, how did you know it was going to be a success?
Because all the work had been done. They had the clear vision, they knew they needed the housing, they knew that the educational opportunities needed to be here. They went out and built the relationships with the universities, with the community organizations, and when they brought all the pieces together, we knew it was well on its way to being a success.
I've been involved with lots of projects in the 40 years that I've been working in the inner city, and one of the things that I think I've learned from that is that we really need to celebrate so that we don't forget why it was that we started this particular project here and who this project is for, our young people. Because they're, once they get through education here, get to university, they can come and live here, buy homes here, and raise their families here. I think that's the thing I see. and not to move away, but to stay here and invest in this area of Winnipeg. This building is going to be here for the next 100 years, you know, and it is going to become the beacon of light, the beacon of hope for this community here. It'll like sparkle like a diamond, you know, and it'll send out its little rays out to other buildings here.
And this is a major redevelopment process, not only of building but of community. And I am happy, yes, I am happy. And I think there'll be more feasting in the next while, yes.
It is gone. The Merchant Hotel is gone. And now it'll be something else. A new creation that's going to make the community an even better place. Amen, hallelujah, and let the good times roll, I say.
So I want to say a couple of things as a follow-up to the video. I think the way we imagine this project is it's a strategic approach to education in a very low-income neighborhood. Very, very much a community effort. This is not a case of the University of Winnipeg going into the North End and creating something, but rather a case of the University of Winnipeg being a part of a broader community. 25 or 30 North End community organizations have been involved in this project since 2011. The University of Winnipeg has been happy and proud to be a part of that, and we've played an important role, but as part of a broader community initiative. And of course, the province of Manitoba has really been key in all of this. We have worked with them all the way through. As the video showed, they invested $9.1 million as of June last year, 2014. That has enabled us to move ahead. What we're building at Merchants Corner is 7 lots. 3 of them on the Pritchard Avenue side, or 4 on the Pritchard Avenue side, which have been used as the parking lot for the Merchants Hotel, 3 of them on the Selkirk Avenue side. The project as a whole will be quite big. It will include 30 units of housing for students with families. Housing is in terribly, terribly short supply throughout the inner city, particularly good quality low-income rental housing. So these 30 units will be rent geared to income, many of them 3-bedroom units, which are much needed. So we begin to put together an integrated approach to education that has a number of different educational institutions, plus childcare, plus student housing. On the Selkirk Avenue side, on the main floor, our Department of Urban and Inner City Studies will share space with CETA Pathways to Education. CETA Pathways to Education is the North End High School Support Program. So they offer an after-school program. Our department will run classes from 8:30 in the morning till about 3:30 or 4 o'clock. We'll end at 3:30, 4 o'clock. The CETA Pathways to Education high school students will come into the same space, use the same classrooms that we had been using up until about 8 o'clock. So we'll have education going on there in the North End on Selkirk Avenue all day long. The big advantage for the high school students as we see it is, number one, they're going to be doing their after-school programming in a university space. And so university will not be something alien to them, something far away and distant. University will be a place where they hang out every evening. In addition to that, when they come into that university space and they look around at the university students, they will see that half of them look like them. Half of them are Aboriginal students and are people who have grown up on Pritchard Avenue. They're exactly the same folks. So what we see happening is for high school students in the North End, they'll begin to normalize the idea of post-secondary education. This is really, really significant. The most recent data from the Manitoba Centre for Health Policy show that if you're a kid in the suburbs in Winnipeg, these are 2012 data, you're a kid in the suburbs in Winnipeg, 98% of those young people graduate high school on time. In the inner city, 55% graduate high school on time. In some neighborhoods in the North End, 25% of young people are graduating high school on time. Graduation rates really, really low. So our idea is that the good work being done by CETA Pathways to Education, the high school support program, will be complemented by their working in this university space and interacting with university students who have come from the same neighborhood as they have come from. We operate our program, Urban and Inner City Studies, in quite a different way than is the case on the main campus. I taught on the main campus for quite a few years, 25 years or something like that. So I know how the main campus operates. We do things quite differently in a number of important respects, but the most important thing, I think, is location. It's the old real estate mantra, location, location, location. Rather than continuing to try to attract young people from the North End across the tracks and to the main campus, which is now 10,000 plus students, we decided to go to the North End. So we're right there in the neighborhood, very, very close to where people are living in an environment which is very comfortable to them. We operate small classes, so maximum 25. Most of our classes are 15 or 20. That, I think, is really, really important. Young people don't get lost. We get to know them by their first names. We get to know their families. They feel comfortable bringing their kids in. A couple of weeks ago, Shauna came dragging in a whole bunch of toys and children's books and so on, which we have in our common room now. People feel very, very comfortable there. We provide a lot of supports. So we provide tutoring supports for our students. The biggest obstacle, we get lots of students from the inner city, from the North End. Many of them have poor academic preparation relative to kids from River Heights or Charleswood, for example. It's not that they're not smart enough. The main barrier is their writing skills. So we have a senior student in our department who works as a tutor. The tutoring is free. She's very, very good. She works one-on-one with students. We offer a lot of assignments that are each short. So it's a very writing-based program. But in my intro class, for example, there are 9 writing assignments over the 12 weeks. Each one is either 2 or 3 pages long. So if somebody isn't doing very well, we get that back, ask that student to rewrite, meet with the tutor, go through it, do that over and over and over again. You learn to write by writing. The environment in our place is warm and friendly. The coffee is always on. We know people by their first names. Our curriculum, we call ourselves Urban and Inner City Studies. So it's an urban studies program, but with a big emphasis in the curriculum on the inner city. So we have courses on poverty law, on community development, on housing, and we focus on low-income housing, on colonization and Aboriginal people, on urban policy, poverty policy. So the idea there is when students who may otherwise be intimidated by university come into our department. They find that the curriculum is something that they have some familiarity with. And then finally, as Shauna mentioned, we try to take a decolonizing approach. About 40% of our students are Aboriginal. Many Aboriginal people have suffered from the long, ongoing experience of colonization. And so we try to build into our curriculum an understanding of what it is that has happened collectively to Aboriginal people over a long period of time, so that the things that individual people are struggling with are not a function of their individual personal failings, but rather of this broad historical process. What we're doing there is working very, very well, I would say. Our enrollment is growing and grow. 5 minutes? Enrollment growing rapidly. 40% of our students are Aboriginal and or inner city residents. 50-50 is the goal, and we will soon be there. We're attracting Aboriginal men. Those of you who work in low-income communities know that that's the most difficult thing to do. I have an intro class, 20 students, 5 of them are Aboriginal men. All of them really engaged, and they are going to do very, very well. Shauna mentioned one of the exciting things that's happening that we hadn't anticipated, which is that students who come from the main campus up to the North End interact with our inner city students and Aboriginal students in ways that they would not otherwise ever have had the chance to do, and it's transformational. It really has a huge impact on these students. And to bridge the gulf in Winnipeg that has become so apparent since the Maclean's magazine article, we need to be doing these kinds of things. So that's what I have to say. And if we have time for questions, I'd be happy to, both Shauna and I'd be happy to try to respond to any questions you may have.
Comment on your comment around the graduation rate, and we find that graduation rates are difficult because the way most of our students progress through the system doesn't fit the definition of a grad, right? Because most of them, or many of them, don't do it in 4 years, and many are coming back as adults. Our adult programs are often really oversubscribed, and a lot more grads we're seeing after people have a few more years of maturity, but that's not necessarily reflected in sort of the stats that often get cited.
Yeah. So we're totally in tune with that. Yeah. Sean and I were just this morning at the release of the View from Here, which is the Winnipeg or Manitoba Poverty Reduction Strategy. We had about 150 people there, and one of the panelists spoke precisely to that point, that inner city students don't graduate in the regular 4-year period, and we shouldn't feel bound by that. We know also, as you've said, that disproportionately Aboriginal students come back as adults. So what we've got on Selkirk Avenue is a whole bunch of adult education programs. Both Shauna and I have been writing a lot about adult education, Aboriginal adult education, and I think we've managed to learn quite a few things about what works and what doesn't work. So one of the exciting things I think going on Selkirk Avenue is that we're figuring out how to do things well and how to produce graduates. And then, as was mentioned in the video, I think, once somebody comes into our program, 35-year-old mother, and she likes it and starts to do well, then 2 weeks later, her cousin comes in with her. And we have all kinds of evidence that when mom or dad are in doing some kind of an educational program, there's a trickle-down effect. Their kids do better in school. So adult education becomes key here, and it has this big ripple effect, and we ought to be doing a heck of a lot more of it than we are now doing. But what we are doing on Selkirk Avenue is, I think, quite exciting.
One major dysfunction of the system. Oh, I can talk.
Yeah, but they can't hear you on the screen.
Oh, okay. One major dysfunction in the system for graduates and kids from First Nations communities is that if I give you an example of a community such as, I'll use Barons River for an example, Frontier School Division runs education from nursery to grade 9. At grade 10, we no longer have any responsibility for any of the First Nation students. Students who are provincial, as in Métis students, remain our responsibility. And so we're able to put in the whole system of supports for those kids as they progress. But that takes place all across our province in schools such as that are run by Frontier, that there's suddenly a total disconnect when the kids reach that point where the school ends. And then the First Nation has to put together the supports necessary to keep the kids going in the city, and they may or may not have the resources to do that. So we really, a lot of times, have no idea, actually, what happens to lots of kids after grade 9.
Well, that means we need to connect more, right? Can I make one quick comment? Just one quick comment, and you've been to our Wayfinders building and presented there last year. It was good to have you. You're connecting kids from the campuses from different walks of life. I think that's huge. We see that in newcomer and Aboriginal kids in our high school program. Maybe afterwards I could ask you a little bit about how you foresee keeping that balance. Because that's been one, as we've grown, so many people are subscribing to this, want to be involved. How do we keep it equitable? Like, how do we work at who needs it most? How do we keep that on the front burner? You want me to respond to that?
You have 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds, holy smokes. I was going to ask Shauna too, because Shauna really is very, very closely connected to CETA Pathways, which is the parallel program to your Wayfinders in the North End. I don't know, Shauna, do you want to say something about that?
I'm not really sure what your question was, but in terms of bringing the different groups together, and like, was that what you were?
As people take interest, we maintain that, talk about a
Right.
50-50 balance.
So I think that's the critical piece. I find in the classroom that if you get out of balance, if you have too many, for example, non-Aboriginal students, too few Aboriginal students, then the engagement isn't the same, and that's why they get marginalized in the main campus. So again, the idea of having about a 50-50 is sort of a good mix. And we constantly do outreach to try to get the Indigenous students. So our priority is not the other students. They come and we accept them and like to have them, but we're constantly focused on getting the Indigenous students. That's our priority.